Let's reflect on 13 key concepts that show why you, me, and every human being on this planet are enough. Enough can be defined as sufficient for the purpose. This article will show that not only can we survive, but how we're actually built to thrive in a fast-paced modern world filled with challenges, setbacks, and even mean people. We really do already have all that is required to live an inspired life. Of course, we each have our own reactions to things that happen in life. Things really happen out there in the world. But reflect for a moment on how this process happens. How does feeling happen, really? Feeling is always created inside of our bodies. Another person cannot get into our brains, manipulate our biochemistry to make us feel something. I know. We say things like, "You make me feel stressed," all the time, or "the kids are driving me crazy." But is this really true? Or is it our thinking about that person, the meaning we've made up about what they did or didn't do? What is making us feel bad? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you find yourself in the world today. I myself am looking out of my window here in Amsterdam and getting ready to move to yet another apartment. I think I've lived in maybe 8 different apartments or homes over the past year. And since this is the finale of our 1-hour format, of our partnership with CTR, it's only natural that I feel quite nostalgic and am allowing just a few moments to really soak in where I've been and where I've come, and same with the evolution of this brand and of this product and of this service and of this community. When I first started this show with one of my best friends, well, let's be honest, my best friend, Megan Macaron, and Kelly Munstrud, I had no idea what was in store. But I knew that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be able to share my voice instead of always being afraid of criticism or judgment or just apathy, really. I had tried for several years before to make an impact as a singer-songwriter and really felt disillusioned because I felt no one was listening. And what's interesting now is that none of that matters all that much anymore to me. Megan no longer creates the podcast with us week to week, but Kelly and I are still doing this, and that's because Meg's off doing really amazing stuff in the fitness world. So definitely be sure to check her out if you're interested in emotional eating and fitness. But Kelly and I have had a series of conversations where we just got honest with ourselves and with one another. And I think Kelly, really hit the nail on the head when he said, "I just want to get to helping people." So that was really the fuel behind our decision to move from a 1-hour format to something much more easy to access, easy to digest with people and their busy schedules. Much easier to access, much easier to digest, because the thing is, most people do have quite busy schedules and they're wearing a lot of hats. So we wanted to really chunk down life lessons in under 10 minutes and provide that once a week, and really just allow one theme at a time to resonate with folks and for folks to explore that for themselves. That's been a huge part of my life over the past couple of years, is really starting to explore things for myself. Instead of using my intellect to research things and get statistics and hear, oh gosh, so-and-so did this and their life seems so great now, look where they've come, I really started to look inward a lot more. I started getting honest with myself. I started realizing that there were certain blind spots I had that weren't helpful to me. I started living with more humility. And so a big portion of that has been actually letting go of the big kind of vision or reason that I had when I first started this podcast series. To be honest, when I first started, of course I wanted to make a difference. And I have to admit, I wanted to be recognized for what I was doing in the world. I wanted to reach some level of notoriety or fame, like an Oprah Winfrey or a Tony Robbins or a Marianne Williamson, or even reaching a level of notoriety in the Three Principles world. And gosh, that is just not what it's about from where I sit today, almost a year later, speaking with you. And Kelly and I both have had the insight of, yeah, what we're sharing is so much bigger than ourselves. You know, I said to him last week, I said, Kelly, I'm finally starting to get over myself with this and recognizing a lot of the self-sabotaging behaviors I've been doing with this business and not getting the website up clearly as I've wanted and taking a really long time to do things. And there's nothing wrong with self-sabotage. There's nothing wrong with things taking longer than we anticipate. It's only when we think there is that we start to suffer. And I can speak from personal experience because I used to stress, suffer, struggle a lot more than was necessary. So in keeping with this theme, one of the areas in which I have been of service over the past 4 months, one that I didn't anticipate, is actually through writing. So I've been getting a lot of paid gigs as a professional writer. And there was one in particular, I'm working for a series of startups, but one startup in particular is called Intention Inspired, and they asked me to write an article on the 13 reasons why we are enough. And I was struck by that. I know that 13 reasons why is quite controversial. And I remember reading the book a couple of summers ago. Actually, my teenage cousin had it on a camping trip with the family, so I picked it up, thumbed through it within the weekend. And I was really touched by the plight of the main characters. And I could really relate to some of those experiences because I'd had similar feelings and experiences in high school myself. So I think it's amazing how we continue to evolve as a species and how things that used to be taboo, like gay marriage even, for instance, or talking about something like suicide or bullying. I mean, these things used to be brushed under the rug a lot more. And now it's becoming a little more commonplace. And so I really applaud the people who have worked on both the TV series and also the author of the book, 13 Reasons Why, for bringing awareness to how suicidal ideation, how bullying, how we treat each other affects. And it isn't just teenagers that are affected by the treatment of others, although that population does tend to have a lot of emphasis on wanting to fit in. I mean, it has to do with the brain development. And we can probably all think back to when we were teens that we cared even more what people thought back then, by and large. So I wanted to share with you a couple of the reasons I wrote in that article, the reasons why we actually are enough. And the point of this article was really just to speak to the misunderstanding in the 13 Reasons book, because there are still some misconceptions that are perpetuated in that book that can be quite detrimental to human beings. I actually wasn't intending to do this, but I think I'm actually just going to read from the article. That's what just occurred for me to do. So here we go. We all get caught up in feelings of jealousy, anger, fear, worry, sadness, and insecurity from time to time. and it's only natural to lose sight of our innate awesomeness and resourcefulness during these difficult periods. Yet this article will point you to the inner resources you have, I have, we all have, by virtue of just being human, that naturally equip us to deal with anything life throws our way. All too often, we're trained to believe the opposite, that we don't have what it takes. We're trained to believe either we have it, quote unquote, or we don't, quote unquote. That some people are better than others, that we ourselves aren't good enough, or that we are forever doomed to struggle. Let's reflect on 13 key concepts that show why you, me, and every human being on this planet are enough. Enough can be defined as sufficient for the purpose. This article will show that not only can we survive, but how we're actually built to thrive in a fast-paced modern world filled with challenges, setbacks, and even mean people. We really do already have all that is required to live an inspired life. Reason number 1. Emotions by their very nature are destined to change. This does not make light of or take away from the fact that some emotions can be incredibly painful and scary even. Strong negative emotions can leave us feeling out of control and warp our sense of perspective and even time. It feels as if we can only ever remember feeling badly, and thus we can only imagine ever feeling badly in the future. But emotions don't actually tell us anything about our future. Emotions in and of themselves can't cause any lasting damage in our lives. It is only from our making decisions and taking action from these stressful states of mind that produce tangible results in our lives. It is helpful to remember that emotions, all emotions, good, bad, or indifferent, by their definition are temporary states. For an emotion is defined as any relatively brief conscious experience categorized by intense mental activity and a high degree of pleasure or displeasure. Starting to notice these natural, inevitable, and sometimes subtle emotional changes is the first step to recognizing the inner power that exists within us to craft our own life's destiny. If the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. Sydney Banks. Reason number 2. Thoughts also are destined to change naturally. Yes, we do have many repetitive thoughts, but we also have the capacity for fresh thoughts as well. You know, those aha moments when we explain, duh, why didn't I think of that before? The ability to have an insight, a new idea or fresh thought is not reserved for only a select few human beings. It's a right that we all have. No matter what happened in our past, no matter what our current personality or circumstances are, insights uplevel our lives and they are built into the human system. Eureka moments, also known as insights, light bulb moments, or aha moments, are sudden realizations that expand our understanding of the world and ourselves, conferring both personal growth and practical advantage. Ironically, insights usually occur when we are not working consciously on solving a specific problem. Rather, they occur in periods of distraction, when we aren't ruminating on the problem, such as when we go for a walk in the woods, take a shower, or go for a run. I'm sure you have an example of this in your own life. You've experienced having an insight before, having an aha moment. Reason number 3. Even better, we can change our habits of thinking and feeling on purpose. I want to make a caveat with this one. This is a sticky area that I see a lot of people get into, where they're told by people like myself, they read books about how we can change our thinking and change our world, and yet the person can't seem to do that, and thus uses that as just another reason to prove why they basically suck, why they're not enough. So let's dive into this with that in mind. With the truth that the system changes anyway, you don't necessarily have to do a thing, but of course it's in your power to purposefully change thinking and habits. So here we go. Here's another amazing ability of human beings. If we don't want to wait for insights to arise naturally, we can give ourselves a boost, a head start towards positive change by retraining our brains. This is great and practical news. Our brain chemistry can and does change over time. I repeat, our brain chemistry can and does change over time. We can help ourselves along a more inspiring, positive path by intervening consciously in the process. Even if this sounds unrealistic to you, the science of positive thinking and gratitude has been proven to affect positive change in the minds and hearts of millions of people. Mindfulness and meditation are other practices and tools we can use to start becoming more aware of disempowering thought patterns. This is important because when we start to gain more and more awareness of when our minds are running on autopilot, replaying the same old fearful, worrisome, and painful thoughts, it gives us a better chance to interrupt these patterns. This causes them to weaken over time, and new neural pathways, i.e. habits of thinking, are built. Reason number 4. Our life circumstances are destined to change too. This is a huge one, especially when it comes to suicidal ideation. Let's continue. So you may be catching on to a theme here. The nature of the human experience is that of change. That, ironically, is one of the only things that stays constant in our lives. Change we can rely on. We witness this in the changing seasons, and we see it manifest in our own lives too. Just because you lost your job doesn't mean you won't find another, possibly even more fulfilling position in the future. Same goes with love. After a heartbreak, it is common to believe that we will never experience love like that again. And lo and behold, at some point, another person sweeps us off our feet. Recognizing at a core visceral level that hard times come and hard times pass is immensely practical and hopeful. Almost all of the biographies of successful people include adversity, setbacks, and even ridicule from others. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Abraham Lincoln had 2 nervous breakdowns and experienced clinical depression. J.K. Rowling dealt with divorce, single parenthood, poverty, and lots of rejection. The first Harry Potter book was initially rejected from 12 publishers. It's so common to want to give up. I know I've had that thought many times myself. It's so common to doubt oneself and question if you will ever reach your goals or if life will ever get any better than this. But those thoughts and feelings don't actually tell you anything valuable about your future. Which brings us to the next point. Reason number 5. Human beings are horrible at predicting the future. Even in the slight chance we do predict a future scenario with accuracy, human beings across the board are notoriously bad at predicting how they will feel at that given time. Studies have shown that in forecasting our responses to events, ranging from receiving a gift to being granted tenure, from being mildly insulted to learning of a serious illness or experiencing the death of a family member, we typically misjudge how good or bad we will feel and for how long. That's a quote from the American Psychological Association. Here's the thing, the dirty, dirty truth. We just can't predict what we will think in the future. We may have a spontaneous insight that rocks our world, or we might be in a particularly low state of mind and take something personally, even though we have laughed about similar statements in the past when we were in a better mood. Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert says, "We underestimate how quickly our feelings are going to change, in part because we underestimate our ability to change them. This can lead us to make decisions that don't maximize our potential for satisfaction." Reason number 6. Memories aren't what we think they are. Similarly, as bad as we are at predicting future events and how we will feel, the way we think about and value our personal memories can at times be just as unhelpful. Can I get an amen to this one? We like to imagine our memories as these picture-perfect videos of what has happened in our lives, but we are mistaken. That isn't how memory works. The human memory is incredibly flawed. Not only do we not represent past events accurately in the first place, but our memories change over time. They change based on our current state of mind and for other biological reasons. One common cause of human suffering I see time and time again, drum roll Kelly please, is the replaying of painful memories. I know memories are convincing. I know they seem to have a life of their own. They provide us with the quote-unquote proof of just how useless we are as human beings, why we aren't good enough, why other people don't like us. You're not the only person that thinks that or has ever thought that. These notions are incredibly common, but paradoxically, people are apprehensive to talk about their insecurities. So we walk around thinking we aren't good enough, that everybody else, quote unquote, gets it. And we don't realize that nearly everyone else is doing the same thing. Indeed, it can be hard to stop these painful warped memories and thoughts from replaying in the mind's eye. But starting to see memories and thoughts in general for what they are, largely inaccurate and irrelevant to the current moment, significantly reduces their power. Reason number 7. Separate realities really exist. With that, you've heard me say this time and time again because it is true. Every single human being on this planet is biased. There's no such thing as a truly objective perspective. This is because every person has different thoughts, beliefs, experiences, and memories, not to mention different physical bodies and biochemical reactions going on at different times. Recognizing the truth of separate realities, that even though we can empathize with another person, even though we may share similar views and thoughts, we can never really walk in the shoes of someone else and vice versa. We will never be seeing exactly the same movie of life, so to speak, as anyone else on this planet. Every human being is living in the feeling of his or her own thinking from their unique perspective. So what are the practical implications for this in the quality of your relationships with other people, the amount of conflict you may experience? Another person, you, me, any person, can only take action from the quality of unique thinking he or she has in a moment. Knowing this can be very helpful in assisting you not to take the opinions, advices, and worldviews of others so seriously. No one knows what's better for you than you, period. Reason number 8, outside circumstances or people cannot control us. Okay, this one's a doozy, but hear me out. Of course, we each have our own reactions to things that happen in life. Things really happen out there in the world. But reflect for a moment on how this process happens. How does feeling happen, really? Feeling is always created inside of our bodies. Another person cannot get into our brains and manipulate our biochemistry to make us feel something. I know. We say things like, "You make me feel stressed," all the time, or "the kids are driving me crazy." But is this really true? Or is it our thinking about that person, the meaning we've made up about what they did or didn't do, what is making us feel bad? Seeing the inside-out nature of life deeply and insightfully can be very freeing. When we investigate our human system without the need for blame or judgment of ourselves or others, our decisions and actions are less influenced by things outside of us. Our thought storms, quote unquote, characterized by resentfulness, blame, helplessness, anger, hopelessness, begin to subside more quickly. We feel more confident in our ability to face any circumstance or person. Alert, alert, alert. Of course, this doesn't mean that we'll never experience negative emotions again. That's a huge desire of people I see, is that they really don't want to feel negative emotions again. And then when they have a day or an hour or even a week of having a lot of uncomfortable feelings of anxiety or sadness, whatever it is, they start to then think that they're back at square one, that no progress ever happened. This isn't what's going on. What's going on is just the natural experience of being human. So again, I still have negative emotions, but seeing the inside-out workings of the human condition has created at least a little bit of space for responsiveness. And this is immensely practical in bouncing back more quickly and gaining more helpful perspectives. Reason number 9. This is one I underestimated for a while. Reason number 9, why you are enough. We have access to supportive communities. You have access to supportive communities, as do I. We are a social species, whether we like it or not. So even though we all experience the world differently, ironically, we need each other. One of the benefits of technology is that it allows us access to bigger circles of people. So if you don't feel your family is supportive, or you don't have many friends you trust, you can always join a support or community interest group. This is really easy to do these days with the advent of things like Facebook, meetup.com. And don't get disheartened with this. Eventually you will find a group of non-judgmental people. They exist out there, I promise. People who are interested in lifting others up instead of putting others down. People who value growth, learning, and friendship over competition and gossip. These groups of people exist all over the world. That's what we're building here with what we should have learned in school. You can also find it in meditation groups, spiritual circles, 3 Principles communities, singing organizations. The sky really is the limit here. The sky really is the limit here. There are people out there who will see the truth that you are enough, and they'll help you retrain your brain to believe that by reinforcing the belief, the notion, the truth rather, that you are enough, that you are an awesome individual, that you're resourceful, that you, by the very nature of being human, have the ability to be resilient and creative. Those are birthrights of human beings. Reason number 10, we can harness the power of focus. I like this one too. With that, whatever we put our attention on, we will experience more of. As they say, where attention goes, energy flows. This is an amazing power we have at our disposal that supports immense change in our lives. Our beliefs are extremely powerful. So powerful that they often make us blind to things in our environment that go against, question, or knock down our current beliefs. This biologically is a truth. You can read the article, The Biochemistry of Belief, for more info. So what happens is this prevents us from growth. It prevents us from garnering a more accurate picture of what's going on in our lives. This can be where some people play around with the idea of setting intentions. So folks will choose what they desire to experience. And in that way, they do take back a bit of control in their lives. And from that place, people often begin to see that they are enough. Often, but not always. Again, it comes down to becoming more aware. Becoming more aware of this notion. We don't have to be quote unquote perfect to feel our desired emotions. We also don't need the perfect circumstance. This is also a doozy. This is so pervasive and ingrained in our current cultural narrative. That's what capitalism thrives on. That's what marketing thrives on. They make you feel like you're not enough, so you buy their product. But the thing is, we don't need the perfect career, the perfect partner, the perfect body weight, the perfect makeup, the perfect anti-wrinkle cream, the perfect car, the perfect house, the perfect weight loss program. My gosh, this could go on and on. The perfect perfume. I mean, these perfume commercials also crack me up. This fixed mindset is actually what keeps us stuck, and it really doesn't provide the motivation. When we're always striving to keep up with the Joneses, it becomes a rat race unto itself where life just passes by. And again, it's this blinder factor where it's harder and harder to see all the good in you, the good in your family, the good in your circumstance already. Outside things don't cause happiness. Things outside of you can never make you experience the feeling of love. This is so evident when we really question this narrative that being rich or famous or beautiful or talented means anything about one person's level of joy, of happiness, of vibrancy. How many stories can you think of off the top of your head of celebrities, famous people, talented people, people who had it all, that struggled with drug addictions, that committed suicide? It isn't a one-to-one correlation. It just isn't. I'm not saying that those things couldn't be nice. I'm not saying it isn't helpful to strive for goals. I can speak for myself. That's the only reference point I have, as we've already discussed. I spent years intoxicated under the spell of ambition, as if I needed to achieve a goal in order to be worthy, in order to be liked, in order to have purpose. That's all bull crap. What was happening is that I was being robbed of my actual experience in life. I was so busy planning the future and living this imagined future that moments, days, weeks of my life pass by that I can never get back. Stuck, entertained by my story of what the future would be and what the future me would be like and how much better that would be. And what I've come to see, my real life is 150 times better than living in some fantasy world that doesn't exist. I've had this peculiar sensation, I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I've had this peculiar sensation lately that moments of gratitude and happiness just naturally come. I don't have to force it anymore. I don't have to do affirmations. The brain really has reset. This is possible for every person on this planet. And it happens naturally. It doesn't happen by the timeline that we set. It's such a priceless, oh God. It's such a priceless experience to see this, that it's hard to put in words. It's hard for me to translate this to other people. And yet I watch other people, I watch loved ones getting so stuck in the pursuit of happiness, in the pursuit of material goods, in the pursuit of the perfect man or woman. And they suffer a lot for this. And it's not necessary. We don't have to suffer in this way. We just don't. A huge component of this, and it's something I can never force onto another human being, of course, but it's waking up and taking life just a little less seriously. When there's that little crack in the facade of seriousness and ambition, humor can come through, a lightheartedness comes through, and from that, a ripple effect is often created. So I encourage you just to take time to laugh, just to take time to really think, is this really worth it? You know, we think that some goal will make us feel happy, some deadline that we set for ourselves, some dream or ambition. And then innocently, when we don't live up to that standard, we suffer. And we struggle, and we feel depressed, and we feel anxious, and we feel self-doubt. We isolate ourselves from others in order to, quote-unquote, work, put the hours in. And yet we don't see that we're the ones that have created the idea that this goal is important, that this deadline is the be-all to end-all. No one's enforcing that on us but us. It comes down to us. Almost through here, folks. So here we go. This is reason number 11. This is also a doozy for someone. I have to also admit that I used to be quite uncomfortable, and sometimes still am, uncomfortable with the word spiritual. But I have had the humility to at least recognize that I do not know. Okay? I cannot claim to know about how the universe works, how energy works, or even how consciousness works. So that has been really freeing in and of itself. But here's what seems to be true from my experience, but test this out in your own life, of course. Reason number 11, we are innately connected. We're never really alone. Yes, it does feel that way sometimes, but the same energy that your heart is using to pump blood throughout your body is the same energy that allows flowers to bloom, children to sing, and your best friend to breathe. We're all connected not only in our shared humanness and our shared experience of having inevitable ups and downs with our moods and life circumstances, but we also seem to be energetically connected. This knowing that you're connected to something bigger than yourself can be an immense relief. And people find this in different ways in their lives, which is wonderful. But here's an example I like to use for this phenomenon. You know when someone enters a room and you don't even have to look at them, they don't have to say anything to you, but you can tell they're in a bad mood? You can literally feel it. Or another thing my mom and I like to explore on the highways is, you know, you're driving along. Well, hopefully maybe you're a passenger doing this, not the actual driver, but You're going along, you look out your window, and then all of a sudden the person in the car next to you looks back at you. It's really this strange entanglement business. And Einstein even, dictated this connectedness as spooky entanglement. So of course I'm not a quantum physicist, but it is interesting to start reading some of the literature. A lot of the things they're finding, the fact that even looking at something, even becoming conscious of something changes it at a fundamental level. So I just write this off as, I'm going to keep exploring, I'm going to keep questioning, but can I ever really become an expert on the universe and how the energy of the universe works, or what happens after I die? I have no idea. And that has been what works for me. Again, everyone will find something that works for them. And my hope is that we can come together in that instead of fighting one another on that, to just allow respect. That again, people see the world differently. Different things ring true for different people. And that no longer threatens me. It used to. But if more of us can start waking up to this fact that we are connected, that one part affects the whole. If we look at what's happening in our world with the terrorist attacks, you have to go back to the cause and effect of invading certain countries, of people's parents and family being killed, that have then allowed a platform of hatred to manifest. So it all happens in an interconnected way. Nothing happens in a vacuum. One of my favorite movies is The Butterfly Effect, because as he travels back in time, Ashton Kutcher is the main character, as he travels back in time, he notices every little thing that he does has a ripple effect into the future, and it affects other people's lives. And this sounds woo-woo, but I can't help but think that there's some truth in this. So explore this one for yourself too. Reason number 12. Our true nature proves we are enough. Hallelujah. We are not the labels we give to one another. We are not our behaviors. We get stuck in this trap all the time. At our most fundamental essence, we're human beings. At the most fundamental core level, we are basically living energy that's moving through a physical form. So it's immensely practical to begin differentiating who you are from what you do. Differentiating who you are from what you have, from what other people say, or as we've already discussed, from your achievements. We often fall into the trap of mistaking our emotions or achievements for our inner sense of self-worth. And as we've stated, the culture is very quick to reinforce this. But what if you're good enough just for the mere fact that you're human? What if you've always been good enough? But since a young age have been force-fed the fearful beliefs of those around you and the culture at large. A culture that ever since you were a young child bombarded you with messages that you were not good enough the way you are. That you need that new toy, that new lipstick, those new shoes, or that new diet to be happy. What if none of this is true? What if it's just an effective way to sell products, as we've already talked about? At our essence, we are energetic beings having a human experience. Sometimes people will call this that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So to take that further, what if no one was even more spiritual than you, right? Every comparison we're making with one another is made up through thought. That's made up through energy. It's interpretation. It's opinion. It isn't truth. It can never be truth. Eckhart Tolle makes an important distinction. Eckhart Tolle actually makes an important distinction in his work between the thinker and the observer. And he's highlighting this made-up nature of thought. He said, some people experience and identify themselves as the voice in their head. And the beautiful truth is that we're not the voices in our heads, because we're able to hear that voice sometimes. So Eckhart Tolle makes the distinction that we're actually the observer, that we're not our thoughts, that isn't who we think we are not our job title, we are way bigger and more powerful than that. We're neither our bra size, pant size, IQ, etc. I invite you to keep stripping down the layers of label and concept. I invite you to keep stripping down the layers of labels and concepts. There are a lot of them. We don't see them often, but every now and again we get a little glimpse of just how made up they are. If we keep stripping down these layers, what are we left with? Just a human being. A beautiful human being. A human being who, as a baby, came into this world with a blank slate. A baby that wasn't racist, that wasn't prejudiced, that didn't beat itself up for having a certain weight. A blank slate. A vessel through which energy flows through. A vessel for consciousness to experience the world around it and the people around it. At the end of the day, we're really just beings that experience the world through sensation and interpretation. That's our essence. When people speak of a spiritual essence, for me, this is what they're pointing us to. This raw, blank slate. And we don't have to be a child to return to that. Again, it's just taking ourselves a little less seriously, looking into the nature of thought, looking into some of these reasons, and experimenting for ourselves. That's the only way change happens, from the inside out of every person. Reason number 13. This is my favorite, I have to admit. We have a natural capacity for resilience. We don't talk like this is true in the culture. But even research studies show that children that even had horrible things happen to them, they were physically abused, verbally abused, sexually abused. They have the same capacity for resilience as a child that did not encounter those things. This is the truth. Maybe one reason why folks tend to blame their child is because we aren't telling people this. We aren't telling them that it wasn't their fault and that they are innately, incredibly resilient. Listen to this. Guess what the primary factor was in whether or not a person bounced back from stress? So, i.e., someone being resilient, the ability to bounce back from adversity. Whether or not the person thought they were resilient. I'm not kidding. That was the defining factor. In a study where participants thought they could deal well with stress, those participants physiologically dealt with stress well. They returned to their baseline much quicker. The adrenaline dissipated in their body quicker. This blew my mind. You know, we talk as if the mind and body is connected. The mind and body are the same entity. That is why we all have the natural capacity for resilience. I don't care what your therapist told you. I don't care what your mother told you, or your father, or your husband, or your wife, or your friends, or your parents. You can be resilient. If you haven't experienced that much in your life before, that doesn't mean a dang thing. You do have access to insight in the moment. You have access to resilience. The point of this monologue, of this article, of this finale episode is to give you some of the best I've discovered over the past few years. The point is this: you are enough. Not as some inspirational mumbo jumbo. Literally, when we look at the science, at the philosophy behind being human, you are enough. You always have been. You're more powerful than you imagined, and we all are. Just because our nature of being human, we have access to a plethora of inner resources that, even though we don't always see, I admit, they are still there. They support us in coping and overcoming challenges and thriving. These inner resources equipped us with everything we need. These inner resources equip us with everything we need to deal with anything we come across in life. That is the definition of enough. It's sufficient for the purpose, and we're hardwired to be sufficient for the purpose. And the more we look in this direction, of our own brilliance, our own quote unquote enoughness, our own intuitive intelligence, the better life will start to look and feel. I've seen that happen thousands of times over the past few years for human beings. With that, sometimes we can't see these resources for ourselves. Difficult situations do exist, people saying do horrible things to one another. Depressive episodes are gripping and can last for a long period of time, but this is where our collective power comes into play. When we use our inborn skills in accordance with others. The best gift we can give to one another is to deeply listen and be present for each other, period. This is love in action. This is our most powerful inner ability. We don't need to try to figure out the right words or give the right advice or even say we understand what it's like for someone else. Because the truth is, we don't know what it's like to be another person. Just as I admit I don't know what it's like to be you, I don't. I just know what it is to be human. I know what it is to show up with love. All we have to do is this. We just have to show up as we are, authentically. That is always enough. When you start to get more experience with this, you will start to see the truth in it. I never thought that this was true before. Again, everyone's life path is different. There are so many methods, modalities, and tools for healing, and seeking professional help could be a really great option for people sometimes. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with going to a counselor or therapist. Nothing wrong with hiring a coach, because we're harnessing the collective power of being human. There are so many reasons why being human rocks. Our capacity to imagine the impossible and make it happen through invention. Our ability to connect deeply with others, to love, to learn, to grow, to laugh, to have adventures, to experience a wide variety of emotions, sensations, and situations. That is what leading an inspired life is all about. That is what leading a happy, healthy life is all about. It's not getting to this state of euphoria or some Pollyanna world where everything is always perfect and adversity never shows up and negative emotions never manifest. We need the contrast in order to experience our world. It's like an inhale. You can't have an inhale without an exhale. You can't have contraction. You can't have release without contraction. And so starting to weather these storms, to show up for each other in a different way, it gives me just an inkling of hope that we can change the direction of our personal lives. We can change the direction of our family dynamic. We can change the direction of our community and the world at large. It takes one person at a time, waking up and seeing this for themselves, to see these reasons why they're enough, to lighten up on themselves and others. And with that, naturally comes more kindness, more self-love, more self-esteem, more compassion. It's a natural implication, a natural side effect of exploration, of understanding. Again, my name was Amy Leo. On behalf of my team, Kelly and I, we want to thank you so much for coming along this journey with us. It means so much that you tune in to listen every week. And we are, again, thrilled to launch in August. The second week of August is what we have projected. We're going to start with the release of our shorter format, 10 minutes and below for each lesson. We're aiming for about 7 minutes, but again, we don't want to stay so rigid. But again, the point is the lessons, the learnings, the wisdom, it will be very easy to digest, easy to sit with, and easy to share with other people, because that's what it's about. It's about learning and uplifting each other. And so to compile these lessons, we're going to be referring to our personal experience with transformation, but above and beyond that, we're going to also look at research that's being done. We're going to also have guest experts still on, where they can talk about certain areas of life, such as money or relationships or dealing with illness, things like that. We're going to have different voices as well featured on the show too from time to time. I'm also going to pull from my catalog of previous recordings and learnings, and also previous client studies and case studies, all again with the intention to provide a platform where people can learn what we should have been taught in school. I'm talking about the lessons that are relevant for living well. At the end of the day, this kind of experiential learning takes us personally much further than any kind of memorization or learning tips, tools, techniques, or reciting back methods. So stay tuned. If you don't want to miss this experience, all you've got to do is subscribe. You can go to amyleo.com, enter your name and email in the bar there, and you'll be able to access our new format, our new lessons for what we should have learned in school via email. Or if you want to make that really easy, if you already subscribe to podcasts, just type in your search engine, Amy Leo. It should bring up our podcast show, in which it will say what we should have learned in school. Click subscribe. I'm talking that makes this whole notion of learning in this way really brainless and painless, because you'll just automatically get updated every week with what material we're releasing to the world. If you or someone you know is struggling and needs help, reach out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's a safe place to share and ask for help. You can dial 1-800-273-8255. Again, 1-800-273-8255. Another great resource is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. You can find them at nami.org, nami.org. They also have their own helpline in which you can call 1-800-950-6264. Again, 1-800-950-6264 for NAMI's helpline. It's a really beautiful community where they're really working to fight the stigma of mental illness and provide a lot of different resources. Of course, I am always a resource as well. You can always reach out to me to find out more about the programs that I offer in the realm of counseling and coaching and education. You can email me at amy@amyleo.com or call 347-201-2691.